Hey everybody, welcome to Ontario Nazarene's YouTube channel. My name is Lauren and I'm one of the pastors here at Ontario Nazarene. Thanks so much for checking us out today. We believe that you are not here by accident and that you have been created on purpose for a purpose. And we want to help you discover what that is and what that means for your life. And so we have a special message just for you today. So sit back, enjoy, and if you'd like to know more about how to connect with us here at Ontario Nazarene, stay tuned to find out more at the end of the message.
Hey, take your Bibles. We're looking at this story. Maybe you're going to follow along on your tablet. Maybe you've got a printed Bible in front of you. But we're looking into the story of David, and we come to a unique relationship that exists. So we're going to jump around a bit as we look at this text, but we're going to start at 1 Samuel chapter 18, and we're going to look at verses 1 through 4. Then we're going to go over to chapter 20, and we're going to look at a few verses there. It's not the whole story of Jonathan and David, but it's a good piece of it. And there's something for all of us here in our relationship with God and our relationship with each other that we need to grasp today. So 1 Samuel 18, and since it's a long text of scripture we're going to look at, I'm going to have you remain seated. But listen to the story. 18:1 through 4. After David had finished talking with Saul, this is after David and Goliath, by the way, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as he loved himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return home to his family. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword and his bow and his belt. So I'll speak a bit to this in a moment, but let me just stop there to tell you what's going on in this scene. Jonathan he's giving over his right to be the next heir to the throne. He should be the next king. But he knows there's something about this David. So what he does by taking off his cloak and laying down his sword, he's making a statement that I believe God has something here, David, for you, and it's not meant for me. Let's go over to chapter 20, verses 12 through 17. Then Jonathan said to David, I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, that I will surely sound out my father by this time the day after tomorrow. So what's gone on here is King Saul is jealous of David. And Jonathan senses this tension. He says, I'll seek out my father. If he's favorable disposed toward you, will I not send you word and let you know? But if my father intends to harm you, may the Lord deal with Jonathan, be it ever so severely, if I do not let you know and send you away in peace. May the Lord be with you as he's been with my father. But show me unfailing kindness like the Lord's kindness as long as I live, so that I may not be killed. And do not ever cut off your kindness from my family. Not even the Lord has cut off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, may the Lord call David's enemies to account. And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him because he loved him as he loved himself. Verses 41 and 42 of the same chapter. So Jonathan goes and meets with Saul and his dad and finds out that Saul really is out to kill David, and they set up this system by which Jonathan will come to David and let him know that yes, his life is in danger. And this is what happens. After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed before Jonathan 3 times with his face to the ground. And then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. And Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever. And then David left, and Jonathan went back to the town. May the Lord bless his word today. Let me start out with a question. It's a question that I gathered in my study, and it's made me think about my own life and my journey in life. And whether you're a teenager today or an adult today, think about this question. Here it is. Is friendship part of your definition of success? In my life, I think friendship was about growing a church, or I thought life was about kind of growing a church. Didn't necessarily think of it in light of relationship. Is friendship a part of your definition of success? Can I tell you, for a younger generation, for Generation Z and and the millennials, this is significant. It is about being in relationship. When we read the story of David and Jonathan, I think there are two emotions that come to play. One is that we either celebrate it because we have it, or we long for it because we don't. You read the story of David and Jonathan, those are the two emotions. You either celebrate it because you have it, and you can put a name and a face to the person who's close to you, or you long for it because you want it. It's interesting to me. We are one of the most connected generations. We have cell phones and social media, but we are one of the loneliest generations. The average person under 45 years of age will make, on average, get and send 85 texts a day. It is projected that by 2025, 5.9 billion people are expected to send and receive texts. Here's an interesting, fascinating thing. There are places where you could live today where there is no running water, there is no bathroom, but people own a cell phone. Text something about that, would you? And so we try this ability to get connected. This message is for you today if you're lonely. If you're a man, and I just know men struggle with relationships. We struggle connecting. Matter of fact, one of my friends posted just the other day as a pastor, he said, I am just lonely. He said, having people just invite out. And he said, and part of that is, for him, I know where he's at in his age. He's in the busiest time of his life. Young kids, trying to find out that balance in the midst of that. Where are those friendships? I think men struggle. I wasn't here on Father's Day, so take this to heart today, man. I think we struggle with this. If you're a teenager and your world evolves around social media, if you're single, by the way, marriage will not solve your problem with loneliness. Some of the loneliest people in the world are married people. Two people who sleep 6 inches apart but won't talk to each other. If you're the leader of your company, I've got something for you. You stick with me to the end of this message because I have an idea for you today that may just help you to solve this problem of loneliness in the workplace where you're at. There's a preacher and writer by the name of Bob Benson. And Bob Benson writes this. He says, we really do need each other. We will never become all that we can be without friends. Long before Bob Benson wrote those words, the writer to Genesis jotted down this need for relationship. In Genesis chapter 2:18, after everything has been created, and you might remember that after each day, God said, this is good, and he created it. And when he created you, he said, you are very good. Look at the person next to you and say, you are very good. Yes, you are. You are very good. There's only one thing that God said is not good in all of creation. It's when he looked at Adam, and he said, it's not good for you to be alone. And so Eve is created. But this idea of relationship is not just about marriage. It's about friendship. Tim Keller, the late Tim Keller, who just died just several months ago of pancreatic cancer, he writes this statement. I've read the story of Genesis a lot, but I've never thought of it. The Garden of Eden was not enough without friends. Have you ever thought about that? The Garden of Eden was not enough without friends. There needed to be relationship. And this is not about quantity of friendship. It's about quality. By the way, those of you on Facebook, you do not have 1,000 friends. You don't. You can't. It's not possible. We can only have a few really good friends that know about our life and can connect with us. It is about the quality of our relationship. I found it interesting to me that in my research on friendship, I Googled the word friendship, and when I pulled up the images, most of the images were 45 years and younger. I found that fascinating. Very few, in talking about relationships, talked about those or showed images of people my age, don't ask, my age. But here's the reality. For some of my own friends in my age group, it's easier, as one writer said, it's easier for us to find 6 pallbearers for our funeral than it is to have someone that we can call at 2 a.m. in the morning. Think about that. It's easier to find 6 pallbearers for our funeral than it is to find someone we can call at 2 a.m. in the morning. That's both funny and sad all at the same time. So David and Jonathan, they have this connection. And either we celebrate it that we have it, or we desperately long for it. So let's see if we can see some markers of deep friendship here. What brings them together? There's 3 things I want to mention here. One is this. They had shared interests. They're both warriors. I happen to believe, even though the story doesn't tell us, that Jonathan was there when David defeated Goliath. I think he's there. And here's what I think happens. I think they're hanging around King Saul, and Jonathan sees David, says they're kind of connected in spirit because they had this common interest. And Jonathan pulls him aside and says, and this is how I think it went. This is the language. Dude, that was awesome. I mean, you're like a sharpshooter, man. I mean, how many rocks did you pick up? 5? Why'd you pick up 5? You could have done it with 1. Dude, would you teach me how to do that? I think that's just cool. There's this common interest that has them together. They are connected by their work. Secondly, they both have a deep love for the king and the kingdom. They both have a deep love for the king and the kingdom. There is this story that's a little humorous. So, one of the Bible has humor to it. It does. So, King Saul becomes very jealous of David, and he will pursue him to kill him. And David is on the run, and he's got like 600 soldiers, so this is not, moving around's not easy. But King Saul is looking for him, and he finds out he's in the area. Well, David and his men are hiding in a cave. That's where they're at. So 600 men in a cave. I've got this picture in my head. You get it in yours. King Saul, I don't know if it's by chance or by divine providence. I mean, there's a whole lot of caves you could go into. The story says, I didn't use this word, the story says that Saul needs to relieve himself. Go ahead, figure it out in your head, okay? So he crawls into this particular cave where David and 600 men are. Now, we've been enough into the story that know that David is to be king. And so his men look at him and says, hey, while the king's doing his business, you can do yours. You can kill him. And David sneaks up behind the king, and he has every ability to take his life. Instead, he cuts a tassel to his robe and steps back into the darkness. And the king comes out of the cave. And eventually David will show himself, and he will say, I could have killed you. But why didn't he? Because David believes in the anointing of the king. He believes that God was in all that. And if you haven't figured out the timeline, Saul will be king for over 40 years. And David honors the king, and he honors the kingdom. And so does Jonathan, and they have this in common. But the other thing they have in common is that they have a deep love for God. They have that shared interest of a deep love for God. I think that one of the things that impressed Jonathan was David's declaration of faith as he went to Goliath. I think that as Jonathan is there, he watches David come up to this big giant of Goliath and hears David declare to this huge man, you come with a sword, you come with a javelin, but I come in the name of God. Their love for God connected them together. They had shared interests. For many of us, our close friends will come out of what we have in common. Close friendships isn't just about sitting across the table and burying your soul. You know where great friendships are created? Great friendships are created in a boat while you're fishing. Great friendships are created when you're working on a car together. Great friendships are created in craft rooms. Great friendships are created playing music. Great friendships are even going to a game together, and it's a hockey game. Great friendships. One of the highlights of our trip is that last Saturday night, we spent the evening with our friends Brian and Becky. We don't see each other often, but we served together in Salt Lake City. While they were at Salt Lake Central, we were at Salt Lake First. And our friendship just picked up where we left off. We spent the evening talking about our lives, talking about our kids, talking about our ministries and what lied ahead for us. And then we got to worship with them on Sunday. That's where we're at, a little church outside of Cincinnati. And just had a wonderful time being in Sunday school and going to worship with them. That's all three of these shared interests played a part in who we are. But let me say this, common interests will only take you so far. So let me give you number two when I look at this connection between David and Jonathan. They were also interested in the well-being of each other. That was important to them. They were interested in the well-being of each other. So David and Jonathan, when Jonathan and David come together, David tells Jonathan, look, your father's pursuing me, and he wants to kill me. And Jonathan says, my father would never do anything without telling me first. And David pushes back. He says, wait a second. Your dad knows about our friendship. He knows that we're connected. And I'm just telling you. He's lying to you. And then Jonathan makes this statement to David. He says, whatever you want me to do, I'll do for you. Okay, I heard what you said. I want you to notice something about their relationship. Stay with me for a moment. But I want you to notice this. They are kind to one another, but they're not nice. And there's a difference. There's a significant difference in those two words. We live today in a culture of niceness. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't want to tell anybody no. We don't want to say to anybody what you're doing isn't good. And living in a context of niceness is, I want to end the conversation by just wanting you to like me. I just want you to like me at the end. So I'm not going to say anything that might be offensive to you or that might challenge you. We just want to be nice. And what happens is niceness is rooted in selfishness. Niceness can be rooted in manipulation. But the word kindness has a different connotation. Kindness is rooted in compassion. Kindness is doing something helpful for others, and sometimes what is helpful is to say something hard. It's to say, I'm telling you, Jonathan, your dad is lying to you. He's lying to you. And am I going to be kind enough to tell somebody that I'm concerned about what you're doing? Kindness is genuine love for the other person. James chapter 5 says this. James talks about this dynamic as brothers and sisters in Christ. He says, my brothers and sisters, if one of you should wander from the truth and someone should bring that person back, remember this, whoever turns a sinner from the error of their ways will save them from death and cover over a multitude of sins. Good friends are there for each other. They're transparent. They're vulnerable. And they have mutual respect. Good friends let you in. Good friends are open with their feelings. Good friends share their decisions with each other. Good friends share their flaws. We are called to not just make each other happy as followers of Jesus. We're called to come alongside with each other and make each other holy. I like this quote by Dallas Willard. Spiritual formation is social. I need you in order for me to develop in my faith. And you need me. Let me give you the third one. The third one is this. there is a stick-to-itiveness in this relationship between Jonathan and David. So they had shared interests, they were interested in the well-being of others, and they had a stick-to-itiveness in the relationship. I don't know if you've noticed how many times the word covenant, if you read the whole story, you're going to read this word covenant a lot of times. Covenant is a promise. It can be written down, but for David and Jonathan, it was an oral commitment they'd made to one another. One writer has said that these covenant agreements were probably what saved David's life, because Jonathan is stuck in the middle between King Saul, his dad, and the desires of David, his friend. He's stuck in the middle, but this covenant holds them together. My son told me a story when he was in the Marines. He said they were going on a long hike, their whole group. And they had to climb a hill, and there was a soldier who was falling back. And I can see this as Brad tells me this. He takes his hand, put it on the guy's back, and probably with some colorful words, told him, "Get up the hill." And what is he doing there? Well, in the military, there is a statement. There's a way that you live by, and it's this: no one is left behind. No one is left behind. We operate in such isolation that at times things happen in our lives, and even as a pastor, I see decisions at times that are made, and I go, why didn't you come talk to me? Why did you make this without having conversations with others? Remember, one of the dynamics of a good friendship is that I'm willing to share about what's going on in my life, so that we could have come alongside, so we could have helped you up the hill. But now you've made a decision that is messy, and we'll walk with you, but it could have been so much different. You can't get through life without friends. We really need friends. So let me take you to one other portion of the story. So Jonathan, as I said earlier on, Jonathan surrenders his position as the future king. And he lays the stuff at David's feet. And they make this covenant. And this covenant is that David will take care of Jonathan's family. Now, culturally, we may not understand this, because when a president is elected, he doesn't go and wipe out the family of the former president. But in this cultural context, that's what would have happened. If you are the king, then you do not let the family members of the previous king live, because they may rise up and assassinate you, because they believe they have a right to be king. So there's this promise that's made. As the story goes on, we know that Jonathan is killed alongside his father. When David becomes king, he finds out that Jonathan has a son. And I'm going to butcher this name. Mephibosheth is his son. Say that 10 times really fast. See, I can't even do it twice. Is his son. And David not only goes seeking out his son, when he finds him, he doesn't say, okay, hey, you can live in this little cottage over here. You do your life. That's fine. I've lived into the covenant. He says, no, every night you'll eat at my table. You'll eat at my table. So even in death, David lives into the promises that were made between him and Jonathan. There's a stick-to-itiveness that's there. You know who the model is for all this, don't you? It's Jesus. Jesus said in John 15, greater love has no one than this, than one lay down his life for his friends. And on the night before Jesus died, he spends this time in the garden, and he's communicating with his Father. So look at the cross, would you? He's communicating with his Father. But do you remember what happened before he went into the garden? Do you remember who he wanted to make sure was with him? He wanted his disciples to be with him. I don't want to do this alone. I have this relationship with the Father, but I also need relationship with each other. Do you see what I see? Do you see a cross? It's both that we need. We need a relationship with God. Jesus is our ultimate model of friendship. He poured his life into others. He didn't come to be served, but to serve. He listened for the cracks in people's hearts, and he filled it with love. He shared his hope and his struggles, and he gave his life for our sin. Is friendship with God part of your definition of success? Because that's where it all begins. It's in relationship with him. And if you don't have that relationship today, can I tell you, God longs to have it with you. He wants to walk with you through life, let you lean into him, talk to him. You are really never alone in a relationship with God. But let me ask you that question that I asked at the start. Is friendship with others a part of your definition of success? And let me give you 2 examples and close. Let me tell you just again this need for this. Is friendship with others part of your definition of success? It was for a guy by the name of Quincy Winston. He and his wife, or he and his girlfriend, they had moved to Phoenix, Arizona area, and he just was alone. He felt that sense of loneliness. And at her request, she encouraged him to reach out. And so on social media, he put out this desire to get, he's African American, and so to get black professionals together, black professional men. He thought he'd be happy if he had 3 or 4 that would show up. 80 were a part of the group. 80. This longing for connection. We want that. But then again, how can you get some of that in this culture of loneliness today? So I told you, if you're a leader of a business or an organization, this might be something for you to think about. This area of loneliness. The former Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, in 2017 made the statement that loneliness is an epidemic. That was his statement. It's an epidemic. I found that fascinating. But he said this is what he did in his office. He said, we have a weekly staff meeting. So we decided that the first 5 minutes of staff meeting, somebody each week was going to share their story. And they could talk about their past. They could talk about what led into the job that they're in today. They could talk about their dreams for the future. He said 5 minutes. And he said, I just want to tell you, those 5 minutes became the most significant 5 minutes of all of that staff meeting. And that's the Surgeon General of the United States. You can establish this where you're at. Looking opportunity for people to tell their story, get to know each other, connect with one another. Here's what I know. Let me just be straight up and honest with you as we wrap up. Developing deep friendships are difficult for some of us. They really are. For some it's easy. For some it's really hard. And yet they're vital. Ecclesiastes 4:10 says, if either of them falls down, one can help the other up. This is just about friendships, but pity the person who falls down, has no one to pick them up. Church should be a place where we can all find great friendships. My prayer for us, especially for those who feel lonely today or feel like I've tried and I failed at this, or I've tried and I've struggled with this, don't stop making the effort. That won't allow. Let me just tell you that the risk is worth it. The risk is the benefit. It's worth the benefit of going out and finding those that you can connect with. I don't know if God's going to give you a David and a Jonathan, but we need a relationship with God and we need a relationship with each other. And I pray we won't stop seeking it.
Well, I hope that was a helpful and a meaningful message for you today. And if you would like to speak with anyone about the message or about anything going on in your life, we would love to connect with you. And there are many ways that you can do that. To connect with us, you can send us a message through our website, OntarioFirst.org. We'd also love to have you like us on Facebook or send us a message through Facebook Messenger. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Ontario Nazarene. We'd also like to invite you today to subscribe to this channel by hitting the big red subscribe button. And then click on the bell next to it so that you'll get notified whenever we upload a new video. And as always, we are right here every Sunday morning for worship service at 9:30 and 11 o'clock a.m. both in person and online. Thanks again for joining us today, and we hope you've enjoyed your time with us. And we do hope to see you again real soon.